My name is Andrew Jones. I'm the Executive Director of Climate Interactive. I'm here with Ava DeLeon from Climate Interactive as well. And the two of us are here to present our En-ROADS workshop. You are right on time. And as you're right on time, please open up a new browser window and go to the Poll Everywhere site that Ava, could you put it into into chat? And so folks, go to chat, click on the link there, or in the top left corner of your screen, you should see a site. Go to a new browser window and lay down a pin. We have somebody in Europe. We have someone in the Midwest of the United States. We want to see where you are as we welcome you. Someone in Florida, California. We did this at 7 a.m. and everybody was in Asia, Africa, Europe. Today is North America. Wow, Canada. Someone in the Middle East, some more in Europe. Okay, folks are arriving. Love it. If you're just arriving, please go to the Poll Everywhere site. You can see at the top in a new browser window and put down a pin of where you are. We want to welcome you, and we're always curious to see where people are coming from around the world. Brazil, folks in South America. Welcome, welcome. This is going to be the En-ROADS Climate Workshop that's focused on some of the commitments or pledges or intentions coming out of the UAE consensus, they're calling it. We were there for 2 weeks. We've been doing some analysis of what we're seeing about what impact these actions would have given our insights from En-ROADS, our simulation model. If you have questions, we see people raising your hand. The best way to ask a question will be to go to Q&A in Zoom. We'll see a Q&A feature in the features of Zoom, and ask a question. If it's a quick question, Ava will be able to handle it. If it's not a quick question, we're going to send you to the support site on Climate Interactive, and you'll be able to ask the question there because it'll take more time for us to answer. All right, we're a few minutes in, so I'll say it again. I'm Andrew Jones, Executive Director of Climate Interactive. I'm here with Ava DeLeon, and we're just thrilled that you're here to learn about En-ROADS and to learn about what we're seeing in the UAE consensus, what came out of Dubai last month. I was there for the full 2 weeks with Ellie Johnston, our Director of Engagement, Josh Lohman, our Director of Modeling and Technology, and we got into doing some analysis on things that came up. But since we've been back, we've taken the text and looked at what's in it, and we'd like to show you how to use our simulator En-ROADS to shed some light on what really came through there. So it's so great to see people from South America, so many in North America, some Europe, Middle East, Africa, out there in New Zealand. What time is it in New Zealand? Goodness gracious. So happy you're coming from so far away. All right, I'm going to leave the poll, and we're going to go look at En-ROADS. And, just as a quick intro, what you're doing today is you're learning about, folks who are new to us, En-ROADS, this online free simulator. Ava, could you put a link to En-ROADS in the chat for people to just open it up? It's available in 20 languages. It runs very, very quickly. So if you make a change, you can see immediately how it's going to change things in the energy mix and the carbon cycle and land and climate and impacts that you might care about in the world. We use it to engage top decision makers. Folks use it in education, business, and civil society. You can go and see what impacts would be in Alexandria, Egypt, if we were to stay on this current trajectory of just implementing current policies and not strengthening everything. And then you get to go see if we did a whole lot of stuff all across this system, what would it do? Might we see a very different future if we're able to create a future? There are tens of thousands that are available, but now it'll calculate and show you in this example, green areas that are not at risk to sea level rise. And you might see that actually we have much better frequency of extreme heat, for example. Now it's just wanted to give you a taste of what this is about. A fast running simulator designed to improve decision makers' understanding of what it's going to take to address the climate challenge and the equity challenge. We've used it with 128 members of US Congress before the passage of the IRA bill. We have shared it around the world, 750,000 users around the world in 128 countries in those 20 languages. Go play with it. There is a training course you can use to learn how to run engagements like this workshop or our role-playing game. I'm going to a university tomorrow to run our role-playing game. It's really fun, but that's for another time. Ava, can you post the link to the training course, Mastering En-ROADS? It's the way that you could become a En-ROADS climate ambassador. And these are the 755 people here. 740 people in 79 countries who have engaged 225,000 people to take more effective action on climate change. You could be one of these amazing people. All right, that's what we're about. But let's go look and talk about this document. Could you send this document around, Ava? This is the final version of what's being called the UAE consensus. This is the document that says what was agreed upon in Dubai at COP28. So go check it out and read it. It's really interesting to see the words that were used as they address many things. Now, there's so many issues in finance, in mitigation, in the Green Climate Fund, and loss and damage. We do not look at many aspects of this work. We're focused on mitigation, preventing future climate change, preventing the equity impacts, as well as lowering future temperature. And so I want to just put this in context, the UAE consensus. The UAE consensus, think of like the history of this. I think it's kind of a big deal because there have been three major COPs or three major meetings of these parties. I don't think the first one was actually a COP, but Rio. In Rio Earth Summit 1992, the world got together and said, wow, this climate challenge is real. Let's agree to do what it takes to prevent dangerous interference into the climate system. Basically address climate change in some way. In 92, that's about as far as they got. Note that it was 93 that our broader team started working on this model, En-ROADS, in its earlier form, C-ROADS. At MIT, a graduate student named Tom Fitteman started building a climate model with his graduate advisor, John Sturman at MIT, who now works with us on the model today. And so that was 92. Let's address climate change. It took a long time through the Kyoto Protocol, through the Copenhagen Accord, up to the Paris Agreement in 2009. No, Copenhagen was 2009. 2015, the Paris Agreement that said, we're going to limit warming to well below 2 degrees with an effort to limit to 1.5. And as you engage people in understanding what's going on in this global sustainability conversation, you can use En-ROADS to explain some of this. You saw the main view here, but this would be a moment when you'd want to go to impacts and you'd go to temperature change and you'd say, okay, the Paris Agreement said, here's what temperature has been doing, 2000, and you mouse over it, you can see in 2003, it was about 0.9. Here we are in 2023, 1.3 degrees above pre-industrial. And the goal is to limit warming, the climate, to below the dotted lines of 2, see the line at 2, or 1.5. And that's the challenge we have today in this next 50 minutes, to try to bend that blue line down below here. The Paris Agreement also said, not just that's our goal, but they set up another important goal, and it was, let's do it by having countries make pledges, NDCs, nationally determined contributions. And those are shown all added up here. Take all the pledges. United States says we're going to reduce our emissions 26 to 28% below 2005 by 2030. And China says we will peak in 2030, and on and on. All the countries, 195 countries, making pledges in different forms. Add them all up, and you get the red dot. So the countries say, we are going to use the policies at the bottom of En-ROADS to bend that curve towards the red dot. That's what we got in Paris. But all it said was, get the emissions to there. The breakthrough at the UAE consensus is that everybody finally said something non-committally, but they said, how? Here's how we encourage you to do that. So what it looked like was down in this section. I'm back to the final text. It was 28-ish. And so here it is. Section 28 recognizes the need for reductions in greenhouse gas emissions in line with 1.5 degrees pathways. And it's kind of weak, calls on. It's like, please, would you do these following things? So look at these, and in a minute, I'm going to ask you which of them you were the most excited to hear about. Please, world, in your own national circumstances and approaches, triple renewable energy capacity globally. Wind and solar, tripling capacity by 2030, doubling the average rate of energy efficiency improvements. So right now, energy efficiency is improving. We actually measure it as the energy intensity of the global economy. It takes less energy to deliver goods and services. That's going to improve. It's going to accelerate. It's going to fall faster. Let's phase down coal, accelerate efforts towards net zero emissions of energy and low carbon fuels. This is sometimes interpreted as bioenergy, but maybe it's fusion and things like that. Transitioning away from fossil fuels in energy systems. That got all the headlines. We'll see which ones of these you liked. Okay, then all these technologies accelerate renewables, nuclear, carbon capture and storage, carbon dioxide removal, and hydrogen. Accelerate actions to get rid of methane, F-gases, nitrous oxide, non-carbon dioxide emissions, and then road and transport electrification and efficiency, phase out fossil fuel subsidies, and then also recognize that transitional fuels, I think they mean natural gas, could still be a part of the mix. So that's all the mitigation language. Go back to your poll. What were you most encouraged by when you saw it just now, or you saw it in the headlines? What? And we're going to vote. I think you get to vote 3 times. What did you like? Transition away from fossil fuels, renewables, energy efficiency, subsidies of fossil fuel phase out, transportation, electricity, electrification and efficiency, transition away from fossil fuels, fossil fuel subsidy phase out. All right. All of them are getting some votes. By the way, it's along the way, I just showed you a bunch of stuff. You have questions, Q&A. Go to Q&A in Zoom and ask your questions. We've got 212 people here, so please use Q&A. Chat. Also, if you have thoughts for your other people here and you just want to share them, go on chat. Tell other people you can be part of this. We don't mind multiple streams. I'm not that interesting overall. Write in chat, write in Zoom. Okay, so it is renewables energy efficiency, transition away from fossil fuels, and fossil fuel subsidy phase out. Those are the things that are getting the most votes. I'm kind of curious, just with the transition away, I'm just going to look. I just want to get a few comments from you all. What do you like about this policy? Yeah, I just write a few things in here. With whatever one you chose, add to it. Why or what did you like about it? What are you particularly excited about? Add an exclamation point to your position. We have a few minutes to hear what people are saying. It's a mindset change. Overall, the fact of transitioning away from fossil fuels, if that's the one you're speaking to, it's a different way. It's not just let's encourage clean energy, but it's acknowledging getting away. Let the fossils rest in peace. Phasing off fossil fuels and subsidies gets at the root cause. The main cause of climate change is burning coal, oil, and gas. Yes, it's realistic and achievable, not a ridiculous stretch. It's promoting a technological boost. The world knows it's pretty good at technology, beginning to address sources and not only emissions. Eliminating fossil fuel solves most of the problems. Need to keep fossil fuel sources in the ground, period. You have to be efficient to initiate a change. These are great. We finally addressing the elephant in the room. No more fossil fuels. Reducing fossil fuels is necessary, not optional. We need to incentivize fossil fuels. All comes down to money. First time transition away from fossil fuels is mentioned in the final report. Oh, todos los factores que toma en cuenta. Actually, did you see that? Clara, can you translate? I don't know if you saw it. Maybe you're answering another question. Maybe you were answering something else. Okay. All right. So let's exit from here and start testing some of these policies. And I think let's just focus in on this idea of transition away from fossil fuels. And a good way to look at them is this graph, CO2 emissions from fossil fuels going up and flattening over time. And it's really important, whatever we're going to test, we're going to do it in the context of this baseline scenario. This is not a prediction of what we think is the most likely future. It is a reasonable starting point for model experimentation that tends towards the conservative end on climate action. We think carbon price is going to go up, but in the model, it goes to $5 a ton and stays there. A quarter of the world's emissions has a carbon price. The average is about 20. That means a global average of $5. We think this is going to go up, but in our baseline, unlike some of the other integrated assessment models, we don't increase and strengthen the carbon price nor other actions. We just say we are going to see more renewables. Look in the bottom right. We're going to see coal, oil, and gas continue unless action is taken. Here's the coal in brown, 2000 to 2100, relatively flat. I think it's going to go down, but you're going to test how to make that happen. Oil in red, blue is gas. Here's that expanding wedge of wind and solar, bioenergy, and nuclear in blue up top. The idea of transition away from fossil fuels, and the big debate there, of course, was that people were coming in to say, we need to phase out fossil fuels. And one example of how to use En-ROADS yourself is you can go run analysis. So when Sultan Al Jaber, the president of the COP, said The science does not support the need to phase out. Someone from the media asked me, you've done some work in En-ROADS. What does it say about this issue? And you all, because you have the model and you could do this kind of analysis, could do the same kind of thing, which is speak to these issues. So here, what I did was did an interview for the CNN of Asia, someone told us, out of Singapore, CNA, and did a short interview in the halls of Dubai about this question. Could you send this blog post? People can go get an example of using a simulator. Of course, I didn't talk about the simulator much. I had to have an analogy and speak in pretty plain language about it all. But this was what came up there, was this question of, do we need to phase out, phase down, or, as what came up, transition away? So let's explore some of the things that can be done in order to transition away. The first one that you picked was about renewable energy. Renewable energy, tripling the capacity of renewable energy. So I'm going to pull up what we have. Now, note, we already in this baseline are anticipating enormous growth in renewable energy. So it is already contributing a lot into the future. Just for a moment, look at this one graph. This is energy from renewables. And you may remember back in 2000 how much wind and solar you would see in your part of the world. 11 exajoules. The growth that you've seen, and I feel like there's a lot more. I've got it right above my head right here. I didn't have it 11 years ago. And when I drive around the world, I was in Latin America and I saw it on roofs all over the place. So that is, here we are today, 36 exajoules, a little over a tripling in these years. So this has been huge growth. But look where we sit in that graph here. And what's anticipated, even in the baseline, it's about 10 times as much over the next 80-ish years. So a lot is coming, and they're saying, let's have even more. The way you would test that is two ways. In En-ROADS, you can just go in here and very simply click on this, boom, or go underneath here, and if you like numbers, can say, hey, how many cents per kilowatt hour am I offering as a subsidy? You could go look and say, well, what makes sense? Well, how much does it cost? You could go and look under finance and see the marginal cost of electricity production. 2000, it was up here at what, 14 cents? The green line, see the green? Wind and solar, cheaper, 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 cheaper. Here we are down here, cheaper than coal, cheaper than gas. Here we are, very, very low. 7 cents a kilowatt hour. If we have a big subsidy and make it even cheaper, minus 0.05, run your mental model. What is that temperature going to go down to? 3.3 goes to, is this going to do it all? Are we going to get a tripling by 2030? What do we think is going to happen? I think it just ran, and I'm going to run it again. And watch the blue line depart from the black and boost it up a good bit. Temperature comes down a full 0.2 degrees. And this on its own helps us transition away from fossil fuels. See it peak and start to fall. Now it doesn't fall, it just flattens. It takes a wedge out of future emissions. Right now we're adding to the model hydrogen, and that's going to help us with this area of storage. If we get cheaper storage, maybe we'll get even more, but we'll be releasing that in coming months. So watch for it. But right now, what we want to look at is see what happens by 2030. The goal was a tripling of capacity by 2030. When we simulate this, we find it very difficult given the rigors of the capturing the plumbing of this system to triple capacity by 2030. I went to one of the analysts in the State Department and I said, how do you guys come up with these numbers? Apparently, there are some scenarios published in the IPCC, 1.5-degree scenarios that do include a tripling of renewables capacity by 2030. But he said, think of it as constructive ambiguity. Constructive ambiguities, like don't take it too literally because it might not be possible, but it's constructive to put out some of these targets. As modelers, we want unambiguity. We want clarity because we want countries to commit to make these things happen. Why is it so delayed? Largely in the model because we keep track of the existing coal, oil, and gas infrastructure and how long it takes for it to retire away. As you know, electric utilities and countries are loath to retire perfectly working energy infrastructure before its time. And if this lasts, the coal, oil, and gas infrastructure lasts the 30 years that it's designed to, it takes a long time to get the old stuff out and the new stuff in. Natural gas does come down over time. Oil, just a little bit because of renewables, right? Renewables don't push out oil unless, of course, we electrify, but that's for later. And natural gas. So natural gas also gets pushed out, but it takes a while. So we don't see it happening by 2030. However, we see a big benefit to it happening. Okay, so there's renewable energy and what it could really do to help transition away. The second one that you voted for, oh wait, you said energy efficiency? Yeah, why don't we do the energy efficiency as well right now? Because it's a similar story. Energy efficiency. Let's go back to the text. What did it say? It was up here. It was A, doubling the average annual rate of energy efficiency improvements by 2030. Okay, that is measured here as the energy intensity of GDP. And I'm moving around pretty quickly. I should have done that more slowly. It lives with population and GDP. You may notice the shape. I always look for the shape. I know it's always falling. It's got these little blips. And now I'm going to go here to the 3 dots, view larger. So it's really big. What are those blips? Those blips are this recession back here in 2008, COVID blip. At moments when GDP goes down, the energy intensity spikes up because the GDP is in the denominator of this. Because this is the calculation is energy divided by global GDP. How much energy does it take to deliver $1 trillion of goods and services? Why is it falling? Technologies are getting better. We're shifting from a manufactured economy to a service economy, and that is leading us to already improve energy efficiency a good bit. Janet Tchaikovsky and her team calculated that right in here, it's improving about 1.5% per year. What would it take to double it? And so the test we're going to do is I'm going to go under here to energy efficiency transport, and I'm going to boost it from 0.5% a year to 5% a year. And we're only able to change the new technologies, right? So this is not going to change everything. This is subject to the same, what we call capital stock turnover delays. Old infrastructure, old motors and internal combustion engines and transportation systems and buildings are going to last 10, 15, 20 years. So it takes a while to get rid of the old stuff. The new stuff will come in 5% more efficient every year. Buildings and industry will come in 1.2% more efficient now, but I'm going to boost that up to 5. So if I boost that up to 5 and we radically increase the energy intensity, what is temperature gonna do? Another guess from you. What is temperature gonna do? Go to the poll. I'm gonna clear responses. And I'm not gonna let you see what other people say. Here we go. So I am going to radically increase energy efficiency, buildings and industry. I'm going to radically increase it in transportation systems. What is it going to result in temperature? Over 3.3, that's where we were as the baseline. 3.1 to 3.3, 2.7 to 3.0, 2.3 to 2.6, 2.0 to 2.2, under 2 degrees. You're voting really well. Keep voting. What you're doing, and no, this isn't a calculator. En-ROADS is not designed as a calculator to tell you the answer. It is to promote thinking. How does it promote thinking? It leads you to do experiments, first in your head, then in the model. In your head, before you move something, you should say, what do I think this is going to do? And then you get to see what the model says. And the model is much, much better at capturing the effects of delays, accumulations, positive reinforcing feedback loops, balancing negative feedback loops, interactions, and various complexity where cause and effect are distant in time and space. The model does it much better by simulating these high-order nonlinear differential equation models very quickly. Starts in 1990. Every 45 days, it's going to recalculate over 110 years. Once we get the result from the model, you test it against your mental model, and hopefully you learn. Okay, what did we get? What did people vote for? Here it comes. And it is 2.7 to 3.0. Wow. I think that's pretty good because I've tested this before. Mind you, many of you probably have access to the model. That's okay. We want you to have access to the model and test things in there. Let's go see. Most of you think 2.7 to 3.0. Okay, here it comes. Here it comes. Boom and boom, 2.8. You were right. For the folks that didn't get to test this in the model, I'm actually going to go here to chat. Did you notice what I just did? I just clicked copy scenario link, and I can now send it to you. And here it comes. Boom. Oh, and I'm seeing some names there in chat. I see some of the people here are En-ROADS climate ambassadors already. You went through the whole course, you ran a couple events, and you're using the model in the world. I hope you all come to the meetup tomorrow, 10 a.m. You've been invited if you're an En-ROADS climate ambassador. If you've been one in the past and you haven't been active, send an email to us and we'll make sure you get the invite. And if you want to come to these meetups of the people around the world, 180 countries who are using it, go take the course, become an ambassador. Can you send the link again, Clara? I mean, Ava, to the how you sign up for the training course. Okay, 2.8 is the answer. Just why? Why did it help? Well, quite simply, it led us to radically cut our emissions from fossil fuels. This is a way to phase down fossil fuels, not out, but phase down fossil fuels just with radical energy efficiency. More specifically, we have less coal. More specifically, less, well, bioenergy, which is good. We're not burning trees. We have less natural gas. We have less oil. This is a way to transition away. That's why it helps the temperature so much. Janet Tchaikovsky did the math to see, do we double the rate of improvement of the energy intensity by 2030? And you can see just with your eye, look at the slope. Does the slope change here by 2030? No, it doesn't change out till here. And so we anticipate from our modeling, it will take more time than 2030 to radically improve this rate. But then, boy, it really is helpful in the second half of the century. One note, if you're analysts and you like digging into these numbers, one cool thing that Janet did was made a spreadsheet in here. I think I actually grabbed it to figure out in what year, with the 5% energy efficiency scenario, what year did the 1.5% annual average improvement that's recent double? Here it goes to 3.4, but not till 2060. If you want to do this kind of math, I want to make sure you understand that you can just copy any graph's data to the clipboard. Copy that to the clipboard. Then you can go over here, and I'm going to open up a new Excel spreadsheet and just paste in here. Do your own math. Do your own math and make your own graphs, etc. In fact, that's what Aproop from our team, Aproop Diraj Ponada, one of our ambassadors, wrote this blog post. Ava, could you send this around to everybody? And this is a good summary of what I'm going through here. It has all the outcomes that I was just talking about. And then he made scenarios to show what the impact would be. So if you want a summary of what I've been doing, please go here to that blog post. Okay, so there's energy efficiency. And I'll just show when we're trying to transition away from fossil fuels, right? Transition away from fossil fuels. If we have energy efficiency, let's go look at renewables again. Hey, whoa, this hurt renewables. What's up with that? We have a lot less renewables in this scenario. Is that a problem? No, of course it's not a problem. The point of renewables is to keep us from burning coal, oil, and gas. And they're very resource intensive and expensive. If we don't have to burn, don't have to build all that wind and solar, all the better. It's better to save energy than to displace it with zero carbon energy. Now, it's not an either-or question. Of course, we want more of both. So if we were to have more of this, we could imagine a boost, but maybe not as much is needed in the long term if we have all of that energy efficiency. So now, renewables and energy efficiency leading to what really starts to look like a phase out of fossil fuels, or at least a phase down, not a phase out. That's more of a phase down very soon. Okay, you said energy efficiency, renewables, transition away, and your other favorite was subsidies. What if we get rid of fossil fuel subsidies? What was the language? Let's go look at it. Phasing out inefficient fossil fuel subsidies that do not address energy poverty or just transitions as soon as possible. So there's some clauses here to say, hey, let's keep subsidies to get energy to people who don't have any energy. I think that means what it means by address energy poverty or just transitions. So these would be subsidies for places where the economy and jobs and people will suffer because they're losing their coal, oil, and gas industry jobs. So they're saying, let's keep those. And we don't know exactly what is inefficient. I don't. But let's explore fossil fuel subsidies, getting rid of them. What are the fossil fuel subsidies? Well, this study by the International Energy Agency estimated it at about, I think for last year was over $1 trillion, $1.3 trillion in oil, natural gas, electricity subsidies. Aproop, within that blog post, did a clever thing. He said, could we simulate the removal of $1.3 trillion of subsidies? Let's look at it this way. Let's go do it at another. I'm starting from scratch, so we don't have energy efficiency and renewables. Let's go under financial and go look at revenue and cost from taxes and subsidies. And what he found, and this is in that blog post, is that if you go here and move these towards tax, You could think of it as taxing coal, oil, and gas, or in the same way, removing subsidies. That's the same idea. In fact, we almost change the words here, but it's too many words to say highly taxed or remove the subsidies, so we didn't. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to change these until we remove $1.3 trillion of subsidies. That would be a minus, well, $45 per ton coal equivalent on coal. On oil, he estimated a 40 per barrel of oil equivalent. You see how that brings oil down, brings that revenue up, starts bringing temperature down a little bit. And then for natural gas, 2.2 per 100 cubic feet. And there it is. If you look here very closely, 2030 will have, I think, 2030, come on, help me find it. It should, I'm trying to point really well. It's about 1.3. 2031 is 1.5. 2030 is 1.3 trillion a year in revenue. Therefore, if we remove that, that would be the same as removing those subsidies. So that would bring temperature down a full 0.3 degrees just by removing those subsidies. I'm going to go back here and do the same 3 in that last scenario, because there we were at 2.7. What if we remove those subsidies? And I'm going to do it a kind of close. I hope it's similar. And we're down at 2.5. So what we've done is we've worked on this on 2 angles: promoting clean energy and renewables and energy efficiency, removing subsidies. And by doing those 2 things, we are transitioning steadily away from fossil fuels, particularly their emissions, peaking, dropping, 66% or so by the end of the century, maybe 50% by the middle of the century, transitioning away, not phasing out, but transitioning away by doing those 3 things. I want to note the framing and a distinction about what we're doing here. And there's this paper. Ava, can you send it around? I just thought it was just such a good analogy. Iveta Gerasimchuk, A New Narrative in Climate Talks, Cutting Emissions with Both Arms of the Scissors. Here's the idea. To address greenhouse gas emissions, to look on both sides, the bottom of the scissors, encouraging clean energy. The top, discourage fossil fuels directly. In the comments, you all got very excited by this idea. Encourage them directly, or encouraging less. That would be removing subsidies. The idea here, and when we model it, and if you've been to other workshops, doing one or the other, we find insufficient to get to our climate goals. We're finding that we need to do both to meet climate goals. So let's add in the other things that were promoted here. You voted for many of them. Methane and other. There's commitments to reduce methane emissions. We're already reducing methane emissions somewhat. Why is that? I'm going to go here to methane. We're already reducing methane. Why? Because we've reduced so much natural gas. But if we were to reduce it in agriculture, 40% adoption of the best practices, significant reduction, and 40% here. Heck, we could go, why not 80? Approved had 40, but what if we had closer to full adoption? These are actions that get us even closer down to 2.2. We're going to look at the other actions. Oh, coal, phasing down of coal. We already have coal going away-ish. What if it went even more away? And you click under here, you could say reduce coal infrastructure down and basically eliminate it over time. One amazing or other benefit of this is what it does to the environmental justice indicator, that is air pollution. PM 2.5 emissions, look at the blue line. Look how steeply it falls and steadily it falls. PM 2.5 emissions from fossil fuels implicated in 1 in 10 of all deaths around the world, according to the World Health Organization. PM 2.5 emissions matter a lot, and here they would fall steeply as opposed to going up. That would be fantastic if we could get rid of coal. So now we really are transitioning away and towards out. Of course, many of you are thinking about other ways to actually address this side of the scissors. And maybe I'll turn it over to you. There's so much that's encouraged in these talks on the clean energy side of the scissors, the bottom part, but we haven't been successful. And here in the US, the Inflation Reduction Act was not successful at discouraging fossil fuels directly. So I'd like to ask you, when you think about discouraging fossil fuels directly, what are the kinds of things that you can imagine? And I picked out 8 or 10 of the ones that I know of happening around the world. So please go and vote for the ones that you think are the most critical. Reducing subsidies, carbon pricing, the Citizen Climate Lobby doing so much in that area, banning exploration and drilling, building codes to restrict infrastructure. I know in Washington State, Jay Inslee helped make that happen. Don't put natural gas into new buildings if you don't want to burn fossil fuels. Setting dates to ban internal combustion engine vehicles. California did it. France did it, 2030, 2035, no more internal combustion engines. Other manufacturing is talking about that. Counter fossil fuel infrastructure locally. We shut down a coal-fired power plant here in North Carolina, where I am. Divestment of finances from oil and gas companies. Divestment. International treaties, stop oil and gas pipelines like Keystone XL. What do you like? You all like carbon pricing and reducing subsidies and divestment. This, to get to well below 2 degrees, these are the conversations and these are the policies we're going to need to explore. And the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty, that was quite a big, important group in Dubai, and BOGA, Beyond Oil and Gas and Alliance, both of them talking about many of these actions. All right, let's go back and try them. Carbon pricing, boom, look at what it does, how soon it brings these emissions down. It brings emissions down very quickly. And that is an important thing, because the sooner we bring it down, the better. We're now down at 1.8. The next set of commitments were around deforestation and land degradation. And this shows deforestation in yellow, and then how much degradation, that is chopping down trees from older trees and replacing them with younger ones, release of the carbon from the soils, and you lose the removals from old trees when you degrade forests. If we were able to reduce deforestation, we're going to look and see what happens to overall greenhouse gas emissions. Here, reduction in deforestation, and not just by 2050, but what if we did it by 2030 is what the goal says. That's what it says here. I'm going to go back and look. I think it does say by 2030. I'm going to go back up here, the forest degradation, and I'm moving so quickly. It's probably right here. It's in a different section. I'm sorry. The forest commitments. But they do say 2030. So reduce by 2030. And then a reduction of mature forest degradation quickly by 2030. If we did that, then we're down here at 1.7 degrees. From 1.7, it may be necessary to bring in what else they talked about, carbon dioxide removal. Approop did a clever thing and said, he looked at the recent IPC study and what the average carbon removal was from a range of models and found that he could replicate that here. Let me see what the overall number was. I believe it was for CDR. If you move this to 58% of the max, it replicates what was in the IPC study, and that would get us over down to 1.5, to the real stretch goal of limiting warming down to 1.5. Okay, I think I put together all of the actions that were proposed. And note, I put them to pretty high levels and assume that we called upon the world to do it and the world did it. And then you can see the kinds of results that would be achieved. Again, some of the key principles. There's no one thing that does it. There were 11 sections in that mitigation area because it does take many seeds to plant this garden. It takes many seeds across sectors, across technologies. And it is still possible to bend this curve to well below 2 degrees. How did we do it? Well, on the energy side, it took a combination of promoting clean energy as one part of the scissors, and then discouraging fossil fuels by reducing subsidies and actively addressing the infrastructure. And what did that lead to? It led to the words that were the most notable in the UAE consensus. And there it is. Transitioning away from fossil fuels. It's not 100% phase out, but boy, it is a steep transition away if you're going to get down to 1.5, a steep transition away. And people asked, and we did this webinar at 7 a.m. for the rest of the world, and they asked, what's the difference between phase out and transition away? We're going to choose to interpret transition away as something like this, because this is what is actually needed to get where we really want to go. So I've been intensely laying all of this out, going through things and changing things very quickly. I want to make sure you have access to this. So I'm going to go into the chat and I'm going to send you the link. You can go look at yourself. But stepping back from the intensity, I want to just be with the good news that was that list of actions that we're calling on the world to take. And now simulating it, starting to see a bit of the world that we would create. So with some things that we care about, I'm going to go back and see, well, here with, remember I showed you frequency of extreme heat? Today, 8 years out of 50 have extreme heat events. 2023 definitely had them around the world. In the baseline, 29 would in 2100. In this scenario, only 9. Only 9. Look how much better that is. Back here, we looked at this part of Alexandria, Egypt, and I showed you some green areas, land saved by actions. It could be much better. So I'm going to be silent. You're going to be silent for 60 seconds. And I ask you, what would you love about being part of a world on track to making something like this happen? Delivering on all these high aspirations of the Paris Agreement, of the UAE consensus. What would you love about being part of that world? I'm going to pull up 60 seconds. What would you love? We're going to be silent. Think about what you would love. All right, that was a minute. That was a minute, my friends. What would you love? Go into the polls, and I want to hear from a few of you. Please, right in there. And by the way, if you like this flow, you could run this workshop. I showed you for how, or you could contact us and we can come run a version of this, not about Dubai, but about climate. Hope for your grandkids and theirs, less chaos, less suffering than otherwise, breathing easier without air pollution from fossil fuels, people living where they want without fleeing climate disasters in their homelands, less ocean acidification, clean air, humans doing the right thing, the chance to repair some of the damage that my generation and me have done to the climate, create a positive environment, reduce negativism and political extremism, a better world for future generations. I can relax, less anxiety, global cooperation. These are things you would love. Global cooperation to actually solve problems for a better world for everyone. People would not experience famine as much. Work within the system. This is wonderful. Thank you. Not having to worry that my children and grandchildren will live in social and environmental chaos. Health seeking and solving problems. This would be health. Knowing my children will once again have hope for the future and maybe consider giving us some grandchildren. I'd like to exercise the scenarios for my country. A cleaner, better, healthier world so we can help each other. Oh, these are great. Thank you. And of course, some of you started to talk about this, what you would like to do. If you're game, I think in the same way, what would you do next? And some offers, Clara or Ava, could you post Mastering En-ROADS? Take the course that we have. Invite us or somebody to your business or community to run this workshop. If you have access to funders, there's so much we want to add to this model. There's so much we want to do with it in the world, in China, India, Indonesia, Brazil, finance, so many places. What are you going to do? Find more opportunities to present En-ROADS. Tell everyone there is hope. You're giving an En-ROADS workshop tomorrow. You're going to finish the course. Fantastic. Discuss it with your friends and acquaintances. Great. Absolutely. What else are you going to do next? Tell everyone there is hope. Okay, we're going to end in 1 minute at the top of the hour. I'm going to stick around to answer questions that didn't get picked up and do just more questions. So if you do have questions, do stick around. Attend these workshops and learn as much as possible. Okay, everybody. Here's the journey we took today. The UAE consensus finally said, here's how we want you to do it. How to limit warming to well below 2 degrees, meet those NDCs. It laid out these 11 different mitigation actions. Sadly, no one agreed to do it. It's more encouragement to do it. We simulated many of them. There were some twists, but altogether, it seems that if you take the most optimistic end of application of these, they have the potential to limit warming to well below 2 degrees. So that's encouraging. And we have a tool that really could take this global charge, the UN saying, we got the world together, and they all said, please go do these things. You could go to your business, to your community, to your family, to your government, to someone and say, hey, we've been asked, and the national government said they agree that we will try to do this. Go implement as much of this as possible in whatever domain and level of power that you have. It won't be easy. It'll be worth it. Go get them, everybody.